Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Thriving Minds podcast with your host, Walter Parada, where we strive to provide you with empowering talks so you can live to thrive. I hope you find yourself in the right frame of mind, focusing on all the things within your control. All right, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about the importance of having a developmental plan. So if you're unaware of the environment that you're in, or unaware of yourself in general, then it makes it very difficult to make significant progress in whatever aspect of your life. What you want to become or the things that you want to do or achieve will be seen as out of reach, like it's not within your realm of possibilities. The progress in your development is going to be largely left up to chance because maybe the environment that you're in, the people that you're surrounded by, could be holding you back. It's restricting you from unleashing the things that make you great. You know, the word development, especially when it comes to personal development, personal growth, seems to be very off-putting because it could indicate that someone's weak, still forming, unable to fend for themselves. That's part of the embarrassment that others put on us, making us feel bad for not being able to do certain things on our own or taking a little bit longer than the average or what everybody else does. But that's such a crucial part to any person in really thriving, really flourishing in their life in whatever that they do. There's the notion that you are who you are, meaning that your abilities that you have right now are all that's ever going to be, and that you can't change who you are and what you can become. This just feeds into the limited mindset, more inclined to just accept the nature versus nurture mentality. What contributes to the lack of properly developing people, properly providing them the right resources to grow into their potential or grow into the great things that they can do or that they can become, is that we're so infatuated with speed. How quickly can we get there? How quickly can we get this done? This is taking too long, and patience recedes further and further. That throws off the right amount of time needed for someone to grow into themselves. Trying to rush this is so damaging that we fail to see the impact that leaves us frustrated, looking for answers when really it's right in front of us. If you just look at many powerful and intelligent animals out there, they share a common thing, which is a mother spends a long time nurturing their young to ensure that they properly develop to be able to make it on their own. African elephants are a great example of this. The babies are born blind and rely on their mothers for everything. You know, their moms will nurse them for 4 to 6 years. The males leave the group between ages 9 and 18, which is a wide gap indicating the importance of spending the right amount of time to grow into themselves for the next phase of their lives. And they typically live anywhere from 60 to 70 years. So that means they spend 15 to 25% of their lives with their mothers. The females, they'll stay with the herd for the rest of their lives, and this is known as all mothering, helping care for calves within the community. So it shows the importance that they have around having the right mentors or leaders or developmental resources in place to nurse their young so they can really thrive. You know, other animals have a similar path, like lions, where male cubs stay with their mothers until they're 2 to 3 years old before venturing off on their own. Chimpanzees, gorillas, dolphins, alligators, polar bears all share this common trait of mothers nursing their young for a good amount of time. And in humans in the US, it's typically expected that by the age of 18, kids move on to college or they're living out on their own to fend for themselves. This is seen as a badge of honor, so it entices kids to want to speed things up, becoming an adult, and the in-between is lost that can make it difficult to handle the harder times that lie ahead. We all have a natural want to be independent, to show that we're strong enough to make it on our own. And the quicker that we can get there, the more that we think that we're going to be satisfied with ourselves. Just know that taking a little bit longer in the process of becoming who you want to be, bringing out the great things about yourself, there's no shame in doing so. In fact, it's very admirable. And it's probably going to serve you a whole lot better taking that approach of taking your time to really allow yourself to grow. But then the outside noise pressures us into forgetting that. And just who you are right now is the top. That's all you're ever going to be. There was this time I worked for this one rancher, and he was putting a lot on my plate, basically just having me do a bunch of manual jobs and would always be yelling out orders. That was his version of preparing me through that tough approach. And I remember he tells me one time, here we don't develop character, we reveal it. This made me pause and reevaluate. Why am I even here? Because it seemed like his approach was just weeding out the weak. So just trying to determine if I was weak or strong, basically in that absolute terms, black or white, either this or that. So what if I don't qualify for what you deem strong or strong enough? Does that automatically make me weak? Does that make me, that's it? That's all I'm ever going to be? So I had a complete opposite approach. My thinking going into that whole experience was just a learning opportunity, an opportunity for me to develop myself, to better who I am. But in reality, I did gain something out of it. I learned how not to treat people, how not to do things. And this helped me realize that is a clear lack of being patient, of really emphasizing developing people for the better. I think his approach was trying to shame me into proving my worth. But for me, that actually works in the opposite direction. It makes me want to flee. I don't need to prove anything to you. So this type of approach kind of gets implemented into many of our daily lives. Just take a look at the school system. Certain students or kids take a little bit longer for them to understand things, and a big thing that is frowned upon is when a student is held back. So for social reasons, if a student is held back, they'll just get promoted because of age and not so much the progress that they make. Maybe all they needed was a little bit more time. I was held back in the second grade, and while initially it was a very tough experience to process in that moment, it actually served me well because at the time, my reading ability was quite poor. And that extra year allowed me to really focus on the fundamentals that helped me do well later on in life. What contributes to that urgency, that want to speed things up, is what talents or skill a person naturally has. And that's part of who you are, that you just can't change any of that. But obviously now, there's so much more research to show that you can do things to better yourself. You can improve on your talents and skills and actually develop in other areas that transcend you. This is a very big thing in sports. When an athlete performs well, it's largely because of their talents and skills that they have. The younger that an athlete is, the more they rely upon this. So when those skills and talents are not as strong or even weak, it makes it difficult for an athlete to perform well. And this affects their confidence and belief that they can do well, which can lead them to not want to continue playing. And too many times, the lower that you go on the totem pole of competitive sports, the less reliable the coaches are. They're more focused on winning and just putting out players that are the best and leave it at that. There's no real coaching. There's no real development in a general sense. And just the other day, I heard such a refreshing comment by a former NFL player. His name is Alex Smith. He was a quarterback for a decade or a little bit more than that for 3 different teams. He had a life-threatening injury that he overcame. And he was a mentor figure to Patrick Mahomes in his first year with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Super Bowl winning quarterback. And Alex goes on to say that many NFL organizations have no plan for these young quarterbacks that are coming into the league. It's just put them out there and see how they perform. The trial by fire approach. And he goes on to explain how damaging that can be because it's not helping a player and it's doing damage to them that feeds self-doubt. It's all about relying on those talents and skills that they have when they really need more refinement that can help them succeed. If they don't do well, then they're not good enough to make it. But Alex Smith, he goes on to say that these young quarterbacks' success is not just on them, but a lot of it's on the team's approach on how they handle them, how they effectively prepare them, And he says, there's no developmental plan. And this just emphasizes that coaches are more focused on a system, wanting to implement what they want to do instead of tailoring, strategies to help these athletes succeed, to put them in best positions to do well. And Alex goes on to mention many scenarios where a lot of successful quarterbacks were properly developed. They were given the time to just sit back. There's actually a plan in place where they didn't have to play their first year, possibly even their second or third year, but then went on to have a high degree of success later on. So if you just take a look at, obviously right now, the first year that Patrick Mahomes was in Kansas City, Alex Smith was a starter. And Andy Reid, the head coach, he said that first year is going to be for Patrick to get acclimated, understand the playbook, while developing his skills and talent so he can be better prepared to handle when he does take over. And Patrick credits a lot of his success to being able to just take in that first year from the sideline, understanding how to prepare like a professional, which is what Alex Smith brought. He showed him how to handle himself in meetings and drills and practices and pregame and in postgames. And there's other successful quarterbacks that followed the same or similar path because they had the right coaches and organization in place to help them settle into a role as a professional. Players like Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. These guys didn't start their first 3 years in the NFL. And Tom Brady, his first year, he was a backup quarterback, and he only came in that second year because of an injury to the starting quarterback. And what's interesting is Alex Smith was the first overall pick in the 2005 NFL draft. The San Francisco 49ers drafted him, and he had a lot of ups and downs early on in his career. And those two coaches that he had at the beginning were not so much focused on his development. They were not so much inclined to play to his strengths. And it was more about just don't mess up the game. Just don't make mistakes. And then once he got his third coach, Jim Harbaugh, he had great success with him. Jim Harbaugh was really more focused on player development and providing Alex the right resources needed to help him develop and grow, which led to his success. Why this conversation came up was because a young NFL quarterback named Anthony Richardson of the Indianapolis Colts was benched after, just starting 10 games in the NFL. He had very little starting experience at the college level at quarterback, but he had what many considered amazing talents. He was this tall, strong-arm quarterback, can run really fast, but he obviously needed more time to develop those skill sets. He had a lot of raw talent, some bad habits, and that's what kind of came about the topic, why Alex was talking about this. But I love that he brought attention to it because this translates not only into sports, but into life in general. So if NFL coaches and organizations have no plan for quarterbacks and other players, what does that say about everybody else, about every other organization? There's no real developmental plan. Even in the schools, it's just, have them pass a test, have them learn, and that's it. There's no proper assessment to see what a person's strengths and weaknesses are, what helps them really thrive, what helps them really grow. And the reason why we're talking about this is that you can take your development into your own hands because it's going to be directly correlated to the amount of what you deem successful. So you're not leaving to chance, hoping to be in a good situation or unaware of it. You make it happen. You tailor make things to put you in the right position so you can thrive. That you don't have to be dictated by your surroundings and just leave it up to chance. So the more growth that you experience, the more progress that you make. It's equipping and preparing to handle yourself in the many situations that you will or may face where you really flourish. Without it, one situation can feel very overwhelming, that diminishes confidence, that contributes into the next situation, and then it just continues to feel overwhelming. And then that momentum continues to stunt growth. We want to do things that limit that. And when growth is stunted, there are things that can be done to correct it. It's not so much that difficult and trying moments are going to be avoided altogether, but it's just that you've developed enough to be able to handle those moments where you can maintain your composure to figure things out, even if you're unable to resolve it on your own. At least you can kind of walk away from that situation and gain something useful. A couple of years ago, I was watching a televised high school football game, and it was this very talented incoming ninth grader. His athletic ability was incredible. And the commentator, he works as a high school scout as well, and he says that while you want these talented players on the field, you want to manage their workload and expectation, especially the younger they are, because them taking on too much could lead them to putting on too much pressure on themselves. And if they fall short, it could be devastating where it affects their confidence and then it affects their performance. That makes it more difficult to rebound from it. Taking this type of approach is very crucial in whatever that we choose to do, especially when it's something new or unfamiliar. We want to maintain that high level of enthusiasm or that want to pursue things that we're after, while at the same time getting acclimated to what we're taking on at a modest or a reasonable pace. With this approach, it allows things to become more familiar that brings a certain level of comfort and increases confidence. And as this momentum is built, then you can start increasing the workload or increasing the amount of difficulty to where you're just building on it and building on it. And this is the foundation of development. It's mastering a certain stage before moving on to something else, and then mastering that next stage before moving on to the next thing. And you compile that together to effectively make progress, and over time, it's significant progress that you see. The better that you can come to comprehend what you're doing, and the more that you do it, it eventually becomes ingrained into you, where the muscle memory takes over. Be conscious that as you're doing it, in the beginning, avoid getting hung up on how quickly you can get it done, and just focus on doing it well and doing it a little bit better. If it feels like it's taken too long and you should have already hit your target, remind yourself that what's a couple of days or weeks or even a couple of months to really understand what you're aiming to get better at. The point of it is to master what you're doing and not merely just get by, because when you only get by, that does not ensure you can consistently do things well. You want to be able to rely on what you've developed and built that it can last. A great example is, me performing well in a few local rodeos and winning a couple of events. This naturally is going to make me feel good, raising my confidence in what I can do. But that alone does not mean I should turn professional, at least not yet. If I did go down that route, it could be a very crushing experience that can stunt my growth. Going from an amateur rodeo, getting on a few intermediate bulls, straight to a professional setting, means getting on extremely high caliber bulls that my skill set is not yet developed to properly handle. Instead, if I was really serious about it, I'd gradually move up, performing well at a few amateur rodeos, then getting on some bulls that are a step above what I currently ride, then entering more competitive rodeos. With enough experience and performing well, then I can continue moving upward, and depending on how well I do and how well I feel, I can move up at the same pace or a little bit quicker. That's just going to be subjective. It's not so clear cut. This approach allows for a more sustainable trajectory upward, where the hardships will be a little bit more manageable because of the gradual increase to the intensity that is being experienced. So getting on a little bit better bull will probably be a little bit faster, a little bit more power that I can get acclimated to and learn from, even if I don't perform well. Whereas if I go from average bulls to superior bulls, then it could be too fast and too strong for me to process what happened. So there's going to be very little to no learning at that point. It's the same type of concept of when you're getting fit. Specifically, if you're lifting weights, it's unreasonable to go from lifting dumbbells that weigh 5 pounds in a week to then lifting 50 pounds that same week. This can hurt and dissuade you from trying to get fit. Instead, it should be, hey, if you start off at 5 pounds, if that feels doable, then you move up another 5. And then you just continue at that same pace until you find that point of resistance that is hard, yet you can still properly lift it. There's no need to feel bad when you hit that wall or that point that's just a little bit too hard. If that's the case, then go right below it or just under that to find that spot where it's strengthening you, but not so much straining you to the point of getting hurt. Having this understanding is just going to help you better gauge what is working for you right now and what's better for you later on. Just because you're not able to do something right now doesn't mean that's the end of it. It just means that you need to work your way up to it more and more. And it can be a hit to the ego, and know that that's okay. It keeps it in check from getting too big. It prevents you from taking on more than what you can handle at that moment. Another important factor in developing well, no matter what you do, which is a great concept to incorporate that's going to translate to whatever it is just to develop great patterns and behaviors, because eventually they'll become habits. Just look at high quality results and what it took to achieve them. It's all about the proper steps taken that allow you to get closer to your destination. The process of what it took to get there, and not merely focus on the results. Identifying goals or purpose of what you're doing is going to help you see what those patterns and behaviors are. So if you're working for a promotion at work, the things that are going to elevate you, being professional in every way possible, like meeting deadlines, communicating effectively, paying attention to the details of what leads to high quality results, executing on a plan, being proactive and solving problems before someone tells you what to do. These are just a few examples of what to focus on. It's just some ideas to help get you going. From there, you can create your own developmental plan and just aim to make it simple. Have in there that area that you want to get better in. Tie it to a goal that you want to achieve. This could be something like, I want to improve my communication skills, and the goal is to deliver the project presentation at the next meeting that clearly communicates the message to the audience. There's so many different directions to go. You just got to figure out what you want for yourself. That's part of the why. It is so crucial to understand yourself because it becomes clear what you want for yourself, and then you can continuously work at it. If the people and the things are not aligned with what you want and are restricting you from what makes you great, you can just move on from it if they're not on board with what you need. Sometimes that's going to be a little bit harder to do, so you're going to just have to find some ways to tailor things to you and maybe have those conversations with the people in place that, listen, I have a destination or a general direction that I'm trying to take my life in. Can you help me get there? If not, then can we have less time together? That way I can have more time to work on myself. Just things like that. It's important to understand this, to not just accept how people treat you and think that's acceptable. For a long time, I thought that I had very little control over this. And the more that I started to reflect and really understand myself and what I really wanted, it just became evident that those environments that I was in was not facilitating my growth. It was not helping me achieve the things that made me great. And this is a great lesson in general. For those of you that are in a leadership position, overseeing people, setting the tone, the environment, make sure that you're patient with the people that you're leading. Leading is not telling people what to do, but really providing them with the resources to help them excel, providing them the right support. And really what you're doing is you're serving them, not the other way around. Because without their great work, organizations can only get so far. It's all about the people that you have in place. How well can you develop them? How well can you position them to really thrive? A couple of years ago, I came across this one article of how Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft, when he first started off, he was a very hard boss to work for, very demanding. He knew all the employees' cars and their license plate number, and he would monitor everyone that would show up and at what time and what time they would leave. He was very much focused on the results, but more recently, he's taken a more patient approach. So instead of expecting employees to be able to deliver high quality results consistently as they're starting off in their career, he's more focused on allowing employees to find their footing because that type of approach helps to take some of the pressure off to prevent careless mistakes. And it also builds relationships to show more compassion instead of purely conditional, meaning that instead of fearing the repercussions of mistakes at work, it becomes more about wanting to excel. So whatever position that you're in, whether you're being led by others or you're in a leadership position, have accountability to yourself and everyone involved, evaluating what you need to do to be better for yourself and everyone. Know that everybody requires some help in some way, and there's no need to try to prove how strong you are by doing it yourself. Be proactive and get out ahead of the things of what needs improvement, and not simply just say, I need to be better at this, but how can I be better at what I do? How can I excel at it? How can I succeed at what I'm doing? It could be as simple as the approach that is taken is ineffective and it needs to be changed. So those leaders that put on a front of being strong and demanding can be very off-putting to the people that they lead. Come to evaluate what's working and what isn't, to clearly identify what needs to be done and what needs to be eliminated. In all of this, be patient with yourself, be patient with others around you, and really figure out what's needed to bring out the things that make you great. Understand that just because you reach a certain age doesn't mean you're done growing, doesn't mean that's the end of it. You always have room to gain something. And see it as that, as not as you're insufficient. We're all a work in progress. And when you can take that approach, the progress that you can make in your life will be astronomical. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're interested in more topics like this, become a Thriving Minds member at www.thrivingminds.live. It's your personal development resource so you can build that right mindset so you can live to thrive. All right, until next time.